Last weekend I made my bi-weekly trip to my hometown of Monticello, Florida, to assist my wife in her ministry to her mother. We mow the grass and do other chores around the house. And my mother-in-law always fixes a nice meal to revive us after the work is done. Well, on the way into town, I noticed there was a sign outside of the health department there indicated that the temperature was 96 degrees. But the temperature wasn't the only thing well into the 90s. Just past the health clinic, I see Dr. Sledge fixing up the grounds around the Boots Thomas Memorial. Yep, he's over 90, and that doesn't slow him down a bit from honoring our hometown hero. Flag Day is right around the corner, and so is the Jefferson County Watermelon Festival. I had to turn around and say thank you to Dr. Sledge. And Monticello's native son, Boots Thomas, was among those Marines that raised the flag on Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima. It's a little known secret, until Dr. Sledge built the memorial. But that is only one of Dr. Sledge's many accomplishments. He was a dentist, in fact, the only one in town. But he was a lot more than a dentist to me. I remember as a child one Christmas, I got this thing that you can make plastic spiders, worms, and roaches and the like. Stuff interesting to a 9-year-old boy. It was like a hot plate, and you had this mold that you'd put on top, and you'd pour this goop into it. And when you heated it up, that goop, when it cooled down, became a nice little plastic, spider or snake or whatever. And you could get the goop in all kinds of colors, I figured out that I could put a safety pin in that thing as it heated up, and when it cooled down, you would have a nice piece of, jewelry? A lapel pin, a roach or spider. I would make my artwork and I would take it down to Dr. Sledge's office, and he would come out of his little dentist place back there, and he'd come out and pretend to be very interested in my artwork, and he would buy some of them and say he was going to give them to his patients. I seriously doubt that any patient ever received this stuff, but he was encouraging me to work, and but his influence didn't end there. He also taught the 5th grade Sunday school class, the boys. And I can remember to my amazement that Dr. Sledge could always remember not only the names of the various characters in the Bible, but he knew their relationships to one another, who was whose cousins and whose sons and all that stuff. And but more importantly, I remember one sentence that he said that made all the difference in my life. He just parenthetically said in one of the lessons, he said that you don't have to be a preacher to be a Christian. Well, you see, I was 9 years old, and I thought that becoming a Christian meant becoming a preacher. And I was afraid of that. He removed that hurdle. An hour later, when the invitation was given during our worship service, I went forward and gave my life to Christ. Well, as I grew up, I began to see Dr. Sledge's ministry was more than that. Every now and then he would approach me, and in his optimistic smile, he would share a story about somebody that was in need, and he'd kind of hit you up for $10 or $20 or whatever you had on you. And he always kept it low-key and anonymous. Never any self-aggrandizement from him or any of the ones that pitched in. He just saw a need and met it. Well, later, Dr. Sledge would lead me on my very first mission trip. We went to Barbados, where I worked in construction, and he did free dental work. He set up a little dental clinic, and all the people on that island, the little kids, would come there and get their teeth cleaned. And it was almost 20 years after he had said it, but I still could see him working and walking the walk. You don't have to be a preacher to be a Christian. Years later, there was a crisis of sorts in our church in that little town of Monticello. Our church, had a house that was provided where the pastor lived. Different denominations call it different things, but you get the idea. Well, the house was kind of old and run down, and there was, let's just call it a spirited debate over what to do. There were some that felt like fixing up the old house was the best, and others just felt like it would be best to sell it and build a new one. Tensions were growing high, and the debate threatened to escalate into a divisive argument. Well, the tensions broke one day during a business meeting when Dr. Sledge came in and held high a deed to a very nice piece of property not far from the church. He said he'd sign it over if the church wanted it to build a house on. Well, the bomb was diffused. Peace and harmony were restored. And today, that house serves to house the pastor of our little church in Monticello. I could go on with stories like that about Dr. Sledge. There's probably a bunch of them that I don't even know about. Dr. Sledge stands about 5'4", yet he's one of the biggest men I know. He's my hero. Thank you, Dr. Sledge, for all the works you've done for which you never received any recognition. I'm very confident that the Lord will say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Those are my thoughts today. Is there a hero in your life? I bet there is, if you think about it. You are today a result of the things you do and the people you associate with. And I'm so glad that God brought Dr. Sledge into my life. Feel free to leave your comments in the space provided on this page. I read them and I'm encouraged by them. And I bet others would be too. And you can hook up with me on Twitter. I am @DataGenesis. And the talking point notes for this video can be found on my blog. The address is above on the screen. We do these videos, myself and a team of brothers and sisters in Christ, in hopes of offering you encouragement, inspiration, and empowerment. And if you'd like to check out the other videos, please subscribe to this YouTube channel.